Welcome to the Angry Nerd Podcast. My name is Arshawn Wade, aka the Angry Nerd. The Angry Nerd in front of a live Facebook audience from my mom's basement. The Angry Nerd Podcast is brought to you in part by a couple of bad life choices and a few shattered dreams. The Angry Nerd Podcast is made possible by money that my wife gives me from my SSI check, some chick named Joni, and proceeds from listeners like you. If you want to be one of the listeners that helps contribute to this show getting better and better, go to Cash App. My Cash App is $ The Angry Nerd. Purchase one of the Angry Nerd Podcast t-shirts. Of course, you cannot get one of the retro Angry Nerd t-shirts like I have on tonight with the original Angry Nerd logo on it. That's only for the upper crust throwback original crew members of the Angry Nerd Podcast. These are the OG Angry Nerd Podcast listeners are the only ones who have this shirt. So shout out to you guys. You know who you are. Guilty plugs out of the way. Tonight's topic, errors of perception. I think people are going to be very interested in what direction I go with this information, but errors of perception, I think, are the cause of a lot of our issues in society today. For instance, I'm just going to jump right into the information. For instance, this is my take on what's an error in perception. For instance, just because a person is not rich, the default is not that they're poor. Not being rich doesn't mean that you are poor. It just means that you're not rich. You see, if you look mathematically, do you remember that little scale that they showed us? And in the middle of the scale was a zero. That was the neutral place. So in the middle of the scale is zero, and to the left is negative, and to the right is positive. So just because a person is not rich, just because they're not all the way on the positive side, on the higher end, does not necessarily mean that they are poor. Where are you going with this, Arshawn? I'm glad you asked. Here's where we run into problems in relationships and also friendships. Because people will say that I'm not mean. Just because you're not mean doesn't mean that you're nice. The default for not being mean isn't nice. The default is indifference. That's what the default is. The default isn't that you're not. To be nice, you have to actively do something to be nice. Just like you have to actively engage in some sort of behavior in order for people to call you mean. People can't just call you mean without some sort of reference point as to where they're getting this assessment from. So likewise, in order to be referred to as nice, you have to do some sort of behavior or some sort of act that gives people enough information about you to make the assessment that you're nice. There are a lot of times in relationships that there are women who will say, I'm nice. And then as you interact with these ladies, you will realize this lady isn't nice. She's just not mean. She's actually almost stoic. It's almost as if some of these people just don't have any type of feelings or emotions. Some of the borderline sociopathic. So, because people have the perception that they're not mean, so the default is I'm nice, they go into a situation thinking that they have emotional currency that they do not possess. What does that mean? Let me tell you. What that means is you have a higher opinion, you have a higher value of what you have to offer than you actually do, than you actually possess. In reality, your emotional currency is worth a lot less than you have it valued at. You have your emotional currency marked up. You don't really bring to the table what you think you bring to the table. Just because you're not bad doesn't mean that you're good. It doesn't mean that you're a good person just because you don't do overtly bad things. It just means that you don't do bad things. In order to be a good person, you have to put forth some sort of good works, some sort of good acts. We look at people like Mother Teresa, and we look at people who have, excuse me, I won't go off onto my tangent about Gandhi, but we'll go colloquially, we know Gandhi as somebody who's about peace. Martin Luther King Jr. These are people who are about peace. So they have done certain acts that denote peaceful intentions. So that's why we look at these people as people who are about peace, because they have put that type of work in the game. People think that because they don't do bad things, that the default is that they're good. No, you're just at zero. You still have to put something into the good bank in order to be considered good. How does that translate into a relationship? Well, here's the breakdown for me. You come into a relationship with the idea that you're a good person. And in actuality, you're just a person who doesn't do bad things. You're not necessarily a good person. And I know some people have a hard time digesting information like that because they probably fit that mold. They go around telling people that they're a good person. They tell themselves that they're a good person. But if you ask someone else's opinion may be vastly different from their personal assessment of themselves and how they do business with the rest of the world. I often tell people, ask people, how did that make you feel? Hey, did I say that the right way? Ask people. Oftentimes you will get a different perspective when you ask someone how what you said made them feel or what it made them think. And then you're going to realize, oh, wow, I didn't realize that was the energy that I was putting that out there with. It'll make you take a really hard look at the way you do business with people in your personal relationships, business relationships, so on and so forth. I see that most of our relationships, friendships, partnerships, and things of that nature break down because people do not have an accurate assessment of how they conduct themselves with other people. So this brings me to one of the hottest topics on the internet right now, which is Lil Nas X. Lil Nas X and his devil worshiper shoes, or 666 shoe. I want some attention from everybody, so I'm gonna do the craziest thing I could think of. Shoe, whatever the name of the shoe is. Here's the thing: Lil Nas X is not a devil worshiper. Lil Nas X is a pissed off Christian. People think that because he put the satanic stuff on there and 666 whatever, that he is a devil worshiper. Well, here's the thing. This is my philosophy on devil worshipers. You can't be a devil worshiper. You're a pissed off Christian and you're choosing to side with Satan. Because if look at it, pull yourself out of Christians, any of my Christian listeners, pull your head out of the Bible for one hot second and just hear me out. The devil only exists in Christianity. The character that we know as Satan, the character that we know as the devil, this guy only exists in the Bible, in the Christian religion. So here's the thing. To acknowledge the devil is to acknowledge who created the devil in the Christian faith, which is God. So you already indulge in the institution of Christianity by acknowledging the devil and then by branding yourself a devil worshiper. No, brother, you're not a devil worshiper. You're just an angry Christian. And then when you go and you read his posts about why he's doing what he's doing, he sounds heartbroken. You guys didn't accept me in the church because I was a booger, and you guys shunned me in the church. Now I have created a platform where I have all of your children's ears, and now I'm going to exact revenge on them by putting this negative imagery in front of all of your little Christian children who are listening to Old Town Road. And that this guy is hurting. He is still hurt and scarred by the Christian church. He's not a devil worshiper. He is an angry, hurt, scarred Christian because of the dogma that is Christianity. This brother feels that his existence is damnation, because that's what a lot of Christian churches preach, and that's what a lot of Christian people, in my experience, believe. So he's probably heard that everything about him, everything about his thought process and the way that he lives his life and the natural inclinations that he has, everything about him is wrong. And that's what he's been told his entire life. And now he has an opportunity to exact revenge on the very same people who rejected him, on the very same people who made him feel like he was less than. Now he's got power. Now he has some authority. Now he has the ear of pretty much the world at this point. That was the #1 song in like the world, wasn't it? Old Town Road. So everyone in the world knows this kid. And he sees this as an opportunity to really give the middle finger to the church. And like I said, I don't think it's done with the energy that he's a devout devil worshiper and he wants the forces. He's going to usher in the rapture and everything like that, like some Christians are talking about. That's just foolishness. This is a kid who's really hurt and he's really damaged goods. And instead of people in the church reaching out to him saying, I'm sorry that you feel this way, what is it that we can do to help you? Because all of that other stuff is just a cry for attention. It's a cry for attention. It's saying, the saying, hurt people hurt people. Well, you know what? When you have a hurt person who has the ear of the entire world, guess what he's going to do? He's going to project that pain to everybody who's on his platform, everybody who's in his vicinity, everybody who's in his orbit. He's going to project that type of energy out to them. Of course, he's going to project his hurt and his pain. So people who are supposed to be Christians and people of the cloth, you would think that these people would have enough love, care, and concern in their hearts to reach out to him in that spirit of love, care, and concern and try to do something to help this young man. Excuse me. But once again, I feel like that's another error of perception. He's not a devil worshiper. He's an angry, hurt, scarred Christian. Moving right along. Quavo and Saweetie. I'm like, is it Saweetie? Is it Saweetie? Is it like Saweetie? I don't know. I don't really keep up with popular culture like that, so I'm not sure. I think it's a play on Sweetie. I think I'd say for me, just called the chick Sweetie. But anyways, I saw this video of Quavo and Sweetie in an elevator, and it appeared that they were in a tussle over his video game bag. Now, I know with the advent of Me Too and, domestic violence being at an all-time high, especially with cabin fever because of the quarantine and everything like that, I get it. So I'm not excusing any of Quavo's behavior or anything if he acted unbecomingly. I didn't see anything where he was like overtly, aggressive or abusive to her. It looked like, to me, I said all that to say this. It didn't look like he was in the wrong to me. It looked like he was doing what he wanted to do, and she was trying to impede him in some kind of way. It looked like she was grabbing onto his video game bag. I don't think that's her PlayStation 5 in the box. I just automatically assume if there's a PlayStation 5 personalized box, it belongs to a guy. I just automatically assume that whenever you get out of my house, get out. I think that box goes with the guy. And I don't think that that's a terrible stereotype. So I generally assume that this is his video game case that she's tugging on. And being that I've been in a few toxic relationships in my day, it appeared that this young lady was throwing a temper tantrum and she wasn't getting her way. Once again, tonight's topic is errors of perception. We see a young man holding onto a case, spinning around, and we see a young lady fall to the ground in an elevator. Man, we've seen that scene too many times over the past 4 or 5 years, haven't we? Let me see. No, I'm not going to call names. I don't want to rehash things. But it appears that the elevator is where it goes down. In the celebrity world, anyways. Because we've seen this happen a number of times. And I just don't think that the young man was looking to do harm to her. I don't think that he was looking to be an abuser. I don't think that he was looking like he was like trying to harm her. I didn't see that. I saw him. It looked like he was trying to leave and she was trying to impede him and stop him from leaving. It looked like she was upset and he was like, look, I'm getting my stuff. I'm getting up out of here. Let go of my bag. Look, I'm leaving. That's what it appeared. That's how it appeared to me. And like I said, you don't hear any audios. So I'm saying how it appears based on my personal relationships in the past. I've been in a situation like that a time or two, and most men have. Most men can say that they've been in a situation where they were trying to leave and a young lady was trying to prohibit them in some way, shape, form, or fashion. She may have gotten physical. She may have just, a lot of them's favorite move is to stand in front of the door. No, you ain't going nowhere. Where do you think you're going? You think you're going to that broad's house? Okay. They'll just make up a bra and throw themselves in front of the door, and now you can't leave. But if the shoe was on the other foot, you'd be going to jail. And that's what I'm looking at here in this situation with Quavo and Saweetie. It appears that she didn't get what she wanted, which means he still left, which is what she didn't want. And now all of a sudden, she's weaponizing her womanhood. She's weaponizing her womanhood, and she's rallying the troops. Hey, sisters, y'all saw what he just did to me? We're not going to stand for this, right? And now he's getting dragged all over the internet. And I think, like I said, it's an error of perception because people, they're so fast to click. They fiends for the clickbait, love drama, anything that's attacking men. Let's be real about it. Namely, black men. Anything that's bashing black men, we're all over it. Let's do it. Let's trash him right away. We don't need to get any background history. We don't need to get any information. He's guilty. We have a video right here. He was found guilty faster than Derek Chauvin was. Oh, we don't know if Derek Chauvin is going to be found guilty or not. I'm just saying, in the court of public opinion, Quavo's already guilty. He's a woman beater. Let's cancel him. Let's take off all the Migos music. Any song that he's on, let's take it off. And that's just wrong. Whatever happened to giving a person the benefit of the doubt? This isn't somebody who has a history. There's not 17 girls lined up saying that he beat him up. We got one girl on a video who looks like she was throwing a temper tantrum. Let's give the guy a break. Maybe at some point you do just let the video game go. But I know video game guys, and a video game guy, that video game is like his child. That would be the equivalent of her holding on to her child's car seat. Not really? Okay. It's not really the same, but I understand. I understand when you're a serious gamer, I get it. Like, I'll leave my clothes and shoes, but my game is coming with me. I know guys like that. So my heart goes out to the kid because I think they're gonna drag him through the mud a little bit longer. I think this is gonna drag out for him. It's horrible because how did we get to this place? How did we end up becoming those kinds of people? Another error of perception. I saw a video earlier. Wait a minute. This just in. Breaking news. This has absolutely nothing to do with tonight's topic, but I saw a video of Chaka Khan, and I just want people to know who are out there listening and who care about what I care about, and what Chaka Khan can still get this work. Like right now today, I know she's 60-something years old, but Chaka Khan is fine as all get out. All right, back to our regularly scheduled program. So I saw a video earlier, and it was two men fighting in a grocery store. There was one guy who didn't have on a mask, and there was another guy who had on a mask, and the clerk or whatever was escorting the guy with the mask out, saying he had to leave. But he's like, hey, I don't have to wear a mask anymore. You know, they lifted the mandate. I don't have to wear a mask. And he's like, well, sir, we're still asking people to wear masks, whatever. He's ushering him out. And then some other customer just comes out of the blue and is like, hey, you want to be a tough guy? Wear the mask. And commenced to throwing hands with this guy. And I was a little bit angry because I felt like the guy who just got assaulted should have turned the tables, and at some point he should have just kicked this dude's keister. But that didn't happen. The guy who ran up and instigated the fight, he got the better of the exchange. He beat the guy up pretty good, busted him up pretty bad, and then just walked off. And there's a group of people who think that the guy who beat up the guy with no mask was justified because, hey, you're risking everybody's health. Well, that's to assume that this guy has COVID. I think it would be a very different situation if he had a positive COVID test and he's walking around with no mask and walking around Walmart, breathing people's air, being around people, coughing and sneezing and laughing and talking. I could understand that. But you would have to assume that this guy is positive for COVID-19 in order to deem him a threat to the other patrons. And if the city officials have deemed that it's no longer a state of emergency, it's no longer a state of pandemic, and we no longer have to wear masks, then who are you? Who do you think you are that you get to assault somebody in the middle of a grocery store because they are choosing not to wear a mask. And more noteworthy than that, when the clerk came and told the guy, hey, we're still honoring the mask policy here at our store, the guy was leaving. I mean, he didn't put up a fight. He didn't act like, oh, I need to be here. Y'all can't put me out. He didn't do that. He followed the guy's instructions, started walking out, and they were walking out, and this other guy comes out of left field and starts assaulting the dude. And I know that there are people out there that think that that's okay, and it's not. Because once you start doing stuff like that, then you make it every man, woman, boy, and child is judge, jury, and executioner out here in the streets, as long as it has to do with wearing a mask. Well, that's going to bleed over into other institutions in society. That's going to bleed over into other things. And so what you'll have is you're going to have the Wild Wild West. If you're just going to leave people out there who can just throw hands with you in the middle of the grocery store because you don't want to wear a mask. Because you decided, hey, I'm going to ride with what the state is saying. We don't have to wear a mask anymore. I'm not going to wear a mask. It's different when it's mandated. It's also different when the people who own the establishment say, we want you to wear a mask in our establishment. I think that should also be honored. If you don't want to follow the rules in these people's establishment, then leave. Which is what the young man decided to do. But this other, I'm going to put a white people's move on this one. This thug, all right, this thug came out of nowhere and just started pummeling this guy to a bloody pulp. You got to use all those adjectives and things that white people use when they describe what happened. White people will always describe it, oh, he just mauled the guy. I mean, he just steamrolled him. It wasn't even close, man. Shout out to white people. Look, I hang out with white people. I love you, white people. That don't mean I'm not going to joke about you. I'm going to say things about you. So get out your feelings. Anyways, but all jokes aside, it's really a terrible thing when people feel justified in assaulting another American citizen because he's operating in his right to liberty as well. Everyone's right to liberty isn't going to be the same. Error of perception. Your right to liberty is that you can take the vaccine. You have the right to take the vaccine. You have the right to wear the mask. You have the right to use hand sanitizer 17,000 times a day. You have that right. You have that privilege. But once the mandate was lifted, that gives everybody else who doesn't feel the same way that you feel, that gives them the privilege to invoke their right to not wear the mask. That allows them their right to invoke their right to not use hand sanitizer all day. Although I think most people are going to continue that habit just because they see how serious it is. But I don't think that anyone should ever get to the point to where they think that they can harm another United States citizen because they don't like the way they're exercising their rights. I think that's the wrong thing to do. We're going backwards if we do that. So anybody who's championing these people who are still assaulting people for not wearing masks in public, shame on you. And the world needs less people. The world needs less people like you. Anyways, getting back to errors in perception. Now, on a lighter note, here's another error of perception. I'm going to help you out with this one, ladies. Just because I know a lot of women say this. Oh, I know I'm not ugly, but that doesn't mean you fine. That does not make you fine. So let me say that again. Just because you're not ugly, ladies, that doesn't mean that you are fine. There are some other things that have to be in place for you to be qualified as fine. And I hear girls say that. That's like the go-to low self-esteem comment. I know I ain't ugly. Yeah, but you ain't fine either. When you're not fine, the default isn't ugly either. Just because you're not fine, there's a whole lot of room. There's a whole lot of room on the scale between ugly and fine. Everybody isn't all the way ugly. Everybody ain't all the way fine. So ladies, you need to understand that's an error of perception. So that's why you went after a guy that you thought should have been all over you, but he looked right past you. And it's nothing that you did wrong other than have yourself valued as something a little bit greater than you actually were. That's just an error of perception. It's because you haven't looked at the thing objectively. And here's what makes it an error of perception. It's a very simple ruler that you can use whenever you want to know if something is an error in perception. Is this thing correct sometime? Is it correct all the time? Or is it not correct any of the time? It's either always correct, never correct, or sometimes correct. If this thing is only sometimes correct, this is not a fact. The fact is always going to be correct. It's always going to be correct. But even that in itself is a fallacy, in my opinion, because I also believe that there are no absolutes. But the closest that we can come to that is 99.9%. And that is the thing that is always true. For instance, 2 plus 2 is 4. Based on the mathematical system that we use, it will always be 4. So based on that is always true. Now, once we get into geometric ratios and things of that nature, these things get all crazy. They start getting alphabet in there. It gets all crazy. So these things are sometimes true. And then we get to where we talk about irrational numbers. So if we're going to look at it from a mathematical stance, that's the way you look at it. It's very simple to do. I don't think there's any girl that all guys agree is fine. I only say that because I've heard some conversations and I was flabbergasted. Some of you fellas have super high standards. I said, oh, I got to get my game up because this brother, he doesn't blink. Nobody is fine according to him. Oh, she all right. But errors of perception is where we break down our communication. That's where we break down our bonds in our romantic relationships. Because the error of perception that tells us because I'm not this, I have to be that, sets the stage for indifference. What is indifference? Indifference is lack of interest, concern, or sympathy, aka unimportant. And that sets the stage for a downward spiral in any relationship, business, platonic, romantic, or otherwise. And you have to be mindful. You have to be bloody effing mindful every time you encounter a person that you care about. Because you have to make sure that you're using the right perception. You have to make sure that you're looking at something 360 degrees. That's the way that you have to look at it. You have to look at it from your perspective, their perspective, someone standing on the outside looking in perspective. And it's a whole lot of bloody work. And I understand why so many people operate in the fashion that they do, because to do anything else, we wouldn't really have a whole lot of time for the petty things that we involve ourselves in. We wouldn't have a lot of time for the trivial things that take place in our lives every day. Perusing Facebook for 16 hours a day, on Instagram, taking pictures, editing pictures for Facebook or Instagram. We wouldn't have a lot of time to spend on a lot of the trifles of life if we spent the tiniest bit of time on introspection. If we spent the tiniest bit of our time on self-reflection, making sure that we are engaging in activities with the right intentions. And it's a full-time job. And once you have this information, those people who are like myself, who have that OCD kind of mentality, and it's like every time you look around, you're using this ruler to gauge a situation. So you're always being highly critical of whatever situation or whatever conversation you're having. So you tend to spend a lot of time staring at people for a little while. But what happens is it feels like you're the only person working. So that's why you have to spread the information. That's why you have to share the information. And if you're in a relationship, whenever you get some new information, figure out a way to get that information to your partner in a way that doesn't seem like you're sharing it from up here down to them down here. Because oftentimes that's what happens. And that's what happened. That's how a lot of feelings get hurt, because when I do get some new information, some people like myself will be excited about the new information and share that information so vehemently that it appears that you're a know-it-all, or you got it all figured out and you're taking a squat on me. You're burning bread on me over here because you think you're bigger or better, or you know something more than me. There are all kinds of things that get stirred up when people feel like they lack something. So you want to make sure that you share the information in a way, or figure out a clever way of getting them the information. Maybe you give it to a girlfriend of theirs, or maybe you give it to their homeboy or something like that, and have them pass the information on. Do it by proxy. And then both of you guys have the information, and then both of you guys can actively work on engaging in suitable interactions with each other. Because errors of perception, and notice I say errors of perception and not in perception. An error of perception is very different from an error in perception. An error in perception means there's something wrong with the person. An error of perception means we're looking at this thing from a different vantage point. That brings us back to our graphic for tonight's topic, which was a 9, and there was a guy at the north side of the 9 and a guy at the south side of the 9. They're both looking at it. The guy on the north side of the 9 sees a 6. The guy on the south side of the 9 sees a 9. Both guys are right, but both guys are wrong because of an error of perception based on where they are, what they see, where they've been. So most of the time we carry whatever we brought with us into our job. We carry whatever we brought with us from our past relationships and our past experiences into our relationships, into our social events, into our social circles. We carry these things with us. So our world is our lens that we view the world through is peppered by the perception that is painted by our past experiences and by our past relationships. That doesn't make that perception correct. And that's what we have to pull our heads out of. We could be operating with an error of perception. We could be looking at the thing differently based on our previous experiences. So we're not looking at it on the right side or from a different side. Just because it's a different point of view doesn't necessarily make it better or worse. It's only a different perspective. And when you see another person's perception, if you can pull your heels out of the ground, because that's what we do a lot of times. What we do with our perception is we'll dig our feet into the sand and say, this is the way it is. This is the law. This is the gospel. And I reject any and everything else that anyone has to say. You have to be open to receiving new information. Whole ancient wisdom teaches us that my people perish for lack of knowledge. And I tell people all the time, the Arshawn Wade remix to that is, my people perish for lack of wanting to know. A lot of times people don't want to know anything else. They don't want to experience anything else. They don't want to take a chance with anything else. Why? Creatures of habit. We like things that feel good. We like things that are comfortable. We like things that we know. We want to go where everybody knows your name. And they're always glad you came. You want to be where you can see the troubles are all the same. You want to go where everybody knows you're do. All right. Enough Nick at Night. But seriously, that's what we love. That's what we like. What feels good, what feels familiar. So we have to break out of that shell. We have to figure out a way to get out of that mental block so that we can take our heels out of the sand and so that we can interface with the people that we care about, so that we can interface with the people at work, so that we can interface with the people that the Most High has brought into our lives for a reason, a season, a lesson, or a blessing. And we have to make sure that we are locked in to what I like to refer to as the universal energy field, or the Holy Spirit, or the Most High, or whoever you believe in, however you believe. You have to figure out a way to stay in tune, because what I've realized is the more in tune you are with your perception, and the more flexible you are with your perception, the more in tune you can be with the Most High. The more ready you are and more prepared you are to receive information from your higher power, God, Buddha, whoever you believe in. But as long as you have a murky lens that you're viewing the world through, as long as you have an error of perception, you are going to constantly be in train wrecks. You're going to constantly be restarting the same life lesson over and over again. Has anybody found themselves in that horrible, horrible, vicious, karmic wheel to where you find yourself saying, dang, I failed this lesson again. Man, it came up again and I failed. I took the test. All right, God, and you promise yourself and you promise God, I'll be ready next time. Let me have another chance. And you blow it again. And if you're anything like me, you've read the Bible time and time again, and you say, God, remember you said a man should forgive 70 times 70. Okay? I know I'm on about a time 137, but I still got about 28 more good tries left. Good forgive me's left. Please, one more. When you have to step back, clean the lens that you view the world through. How many of the things that you believe about people, women, children, parenting, how many things do you believe about politics? How many things do you believe that are not 100% correct? How many things do you believe or have you believed that no longer serve you? That you recognize as a rule that you've lived by that no longer serves you? If you haven't identified things that you used to live by 10 years ago that you no longer live by today, I'm telling you, you're in a sad way, buddy. Because that means you are doing no self-reflection. That means you are taking no moral inventory. You have to take a look at some of the things that no longer serve you. You have to take a look at some of the things that people keep telling you are a problem. You have to take a look at some of the things that you keep hearing over and over as your life goes on. People in different states, people in different cities have told you that this is a problem. You need to take a look at it. There's something going on. You have an error of perception going on somewhere, some way, some form. There's an error of perception taking place, because if this situation continues to crop up in your life with different people, the common denominator is you. And you have to take a good hard look at yourself and figure out, what do I need to do differently in order to get a different result? How do I need to look at this thing differently? See, there are men who continually run afoul of women because their perception of how they should deal with women is skewed. It's slanted. It's peppered by their previous experiences, which have told them that you are supposed to treat women like this. And maybe, just maybe, at some point in time in their life, that was a method that served them, because it may have been developed as a coping mechanism to deal with a woman who was not a good person. It may have been a coping mechanism developed to deal with a woman who was a predator. That's something else we don't like to talk about, but that's another show. Here's the thing. At some point, you have to realize, I'm no longer in that situation that I developed this coping mechanism for. So it no longer serves me. So what I have to do now is deprogram myself from this learned behavior and reprogram myself with a more suitable behavior. In lies most of our problem. We cannot do that. It takes a professional to come in and help guide you through the process that is tearing down negative thought patterns, negative beliefs, negative perceptions that no longer serve you, and building new ones. Because here's the thing, you can't get something out of nothing. You can't pour from an empty cup. So once you take the old errors of perception out, you have nothing. You don't have a reference point for what suitable perceptions are. That's why you have to have professional guidance once you take this journey of cleaning the lens. Once you take the journey of cleaning the lens so that you have an appropriate or suitable perception of the world, once that lens has been cleared, now you can appropriately see what's what and what ain't. Once you're at that place, now you can possibly move out from under the tutelage of the psychiatrist or the therapist or the counselor, whatever professional you decide to go to help bring you through this process. So here's the thing. I can't identify these things for you, because if I was to tell you what's wrong with you, you would say Arshawn's a POS. He's burning bread on me. He's talking trash on me. He's a hater. He's hating on me, because that's how that works. That's another defense mechanism that you develop to protect the ego, to protect the errors of perception. It's insanity is what it is. But you have to get with self, and you have to take a hard look at yourself and your previous relationships, your previous business partners, your previous friendships. You have to take a hard look at them, and you have to find the common denominators. You have to figure out what your causes and conditions of getting down wrong with people habitually. What is the cause of me habitually getting down wrong with people? And you can only do that once you get with self, you get honest with self, and you get with a professional in some way, shape, form, or fashion, and you work through and figure out what the causes and conditions are of that. Clean that lens by working with the professional and destroying those old errors of perception and developing some new ones. Listen, I'm not really that smart of a guy. I don't have all the answers. I don't even have all the questions. I'm not entirely sure that I know what I'm talking about half the time when my mouth's moving. But what I do like to do is get conversations started, and conversations like this one right here. I hope that somebody got something out of this episode. I hope somebody who's listening is taking a hard look at themselves and how they view the world. Taking a look at their past relationships and figuring out where they went wrong. I do want to say this before I sign off tonight, though. Make sure that while you're doing your personal moral inventory, make sure that while you're doing your self-reflection and your introspection, make sure that you only take responsibility for those things that you identify as your crap. Because what can happen, and this is just a warning, what can happen is that you will become a chronic responsibility taker. And you will take responsibility for things that you had no control over, no power over, and that didn't have anything to do with you or anything that you did right or wrong. It was 100% someone else's behavior, and it's their responsibility. But you only get to identify that by taking the trip, by taking the journey and diving inward and figuring out what's what. And then you can decide what's yours, what's theirs, give them what's theirs, and then take what's yours, what's your responsibility for your relationships, friendships, business partnerships going awry. Then you can figure out and pinpoint what you need to do in order to get yourself on the right track. Hey, my name is Arshawn Wade, aka The Angry Nerd. Thank you for listening. Peace.